Certain parts of the world seem untouched by humans. Remote areas of the Amazon, the heart of Australia's outback, the expansive Pacific Ocean. These places feel pristine, untouched by our presence. But here's the intriguing question. What if even these refugees are about to undergo a transformation so dramatic, it shifts the balance of life as we know it? Imagine a world where the familiar becomes alien, where the buzzing of a bee takes on a new, ominous tone. Welcome to this channel. And today we're answering the extraordinary. What if the biggest threat to the world was the tiniest? If some of the world's most remote locations were suddenly overrun by giant insects, it could potentially lead to ecological havoc. These remote regions often serve as sanctuaries for unique and delicate ecosystems, housing species untouched by human interference. When giant insects invade such areas, they could pose a grave threat to the delicate balance of these ecosystems. For instance, they could decimate local plant populations, disrupting food chains and upsetting the equilibrium that has been carefully maintained over years. Furthermore, these giant insects might introduce new diseases or predators to which native species have no defense. The consequences could be devastating, potentially leading to mass extinctions and irreparably altering these regions forever. As we dig deeper into this fascinating topic, let's consider why these insects might suddenly grow. Scientists theorize that a series of environmental factors combined, increased atmospheric oxygen levels, genetic mutations favoring gigantism, and changes in climate, could contribute to this dramatic growth. However, it's important to understand that while such scenarios are theoretically possible, they are highly speculative and have not been observed in real life. Yet, they offer a compelling thought experiment that challenges our understanding of the natural world. If some of the world's most remote locations were suddenly overrun by giant insects, it could also spell trouble for scientific research. Many of these areas are home to ongoing research projects that study untouched ecosystems or monitor the effects of climate change. The introduction of giant insects could disrupt these studies, rendering years of data unusable and setting back our understanding of the natural world. For example, if these insects were to feed on rare plants or animals that are being studied, it could impede our ability to understand their life cycles or the impacts of environmental changes on them. Additionally, giant insects could damage sensitive equipment or introduce contaminants to pristine environments, further hindering scientific progress. In a world where remote locations are overrun by giant insects, the implications for the future of scientific research would be profound. Scientists would be forced to adapt their methodologies and equipment to account for these new challenges, potentially opening up new avenues of research, but also diverting resources away from existing projects. The introduction of these insects could also raise ethical concerns. Should researchers attempt to capture and study them? How would they mitigate the risks posed by these giant creatures? These questions would force scientists to confront not only the practical challenges, but also the ethical considerations of dealing with creatures of this magnitude. It's hard to imagine how such an infestation could be contained. Even with immediate global awareness, the sheer number and adaptability of insects make them difficult to eradicate. Once established in remote regions, these giant insects could spread rapidly, driven by their natural instincts and the absence of predators in unfamiliar territories. For instance, if a single pregnant female insect were to escape detection and establish a colony, the population could explode exponentially within a matter of months. Containment efforts could prove futile, as these insects, unfazed by human interventions, continue to expand their territory. Furthermore, attempting to eradicate them could inadvertently harm the local ecosystem, setting off a chain reaction with unpredictable consequences. As we contemplate this scenario, it's essential to recognize the complexity of ecological systems. Attempting to solve one problem, like the presence of giant insects, could trigger a cascade of negative effects elsewhere. It raises critical questions about the unintended consequences of our actions and the delicate balance that underpins the stability of our planet's ecosystems. But it's not just about the invasion itself. The aftermath of a remote location being overtaken by giant insects could be equally devastating. The impact on local flora could be catastrophic, as these insects consume vast quantities of vegetation, potentially leading to widespread crop failures and ecological imbalances. The disruption of local food chains could trigger a domino effect, impacting species that rely on these plants or the insects themselves as part of their diet. Moreover, The presence of giant insects could pose a significant risk to human populations in nearby areas. They could become a new source of disease, either directly through bites or indirectly by contaminating water sources. Their sheer size and strength could also make them dangerous, causing physical harm or even fatalities. In such a scenario, remote areas would cease to be havens of tranquility and instead become zones of danger. As we ponder this unsettling possibility, it's crucial to recognize the interconnectedness of our world. The problems aren't confined to a single location. They have the potential to ripple outwards, affecting neighboring regions and even the global balance of nature. So what could we do to counteract this? Eradication efforts would likely be a top priority, but the practicality of such missions in remote areas is questionable. The sheer number and adaptability of insects make complete removal nearly impossible. Furthermore, these regions are often difficult to access, lacking the infrastructure needed to mount large-scale eradication campaigns. For example, if the affected area is deep within a dense forest or across a vast, arid landscape, it could be challenging to deploy the necessary resources. Even if successful in eliminating the visible insect population, there's no guarantee that all eggs or dormant life stages would be destroyed, leaving the door open for resurgence. Adaptation would be another key strategy, but in a scenario involving giant insects, this can be challenging. Constructing barriers or deploying pesticides might be effective against smaller pests, but against giant insects, these methods could prove ineffective or even backfire. For instance, if a pesticide were used, it would likely need to be incredibly potent, posing risks to both human applicators and the surrounding ecosystem. The use of genetically modified organisms to control insect populations is also a possibility. But this approach carries its own set of ethical and ecological concerns. The discovery of a remote location overrun by giant insects could trigger a scramble for resources, both tangible and intangible. Governments and organizations would compete to study these creatures, hoping to unravel the secrets behind their sudden growth and find ways to control them. For example, there would be a surge in biological research aimed at understanding the insect's physiology, behavior, and vulnerabilities. At the same time, there would be a race to secure resources to fund expeditions and research, potentially diverting vital funds from other areas of scientific inquiry. This struggle for resources could intensify existing rivalries and spark new conflicts, highlighting the darker aspects of human nature in the face of such a dramatic discovery. It's in times like these that global cooperation becomes vital. International collaboration would be essential to share resources, knowledge, and strategies for containment. Organizations like the United Nations would play a pivotal role in coordinating these efforts, ensuring that no country acted unilaterally, potentially aggravating the situation. But achieving such cooperation wouldn't be easy, especially given the potential for each nation to prioritize its own interests and security over the collective good. The idea of giant insects presents us with a compelling thought experiment. It challenges our understanding of the natural world and forces us to confront the potential consequences of ecological imbalance. Whether viewed as a cautionary tale or a source of fascination, it serves as a reminder of the complexity and fragility of our planet's ecosystems. It also highlights the importance of scientific literacy and global cooperation in navigating the challenges that lie ahead. As we continue to explore the mysteries of the natural world, we must remember that the smallest creatures can have the biggest impact.